What I'd like to talk to you about is some thoughts on resilience and how might the network, to a certain extent, align with the Bristol Green Capital Partnership, which I'll talk to you a bit about that. I contributed to the European Green Capital Year. This was posed to me as part of what we might be able to do. I hope you're all very much aware that Green Capital Year is well apace. And lots of things are actually happening, huge events. The energy tree last night was inaugurated and lit up. So there were sort of questions that were asked by Chris here as to whom should we in this network link in the Bristol Green Capital Partnership and within the Bristol City Council as well. Now I can't speak for Bristol City Council, but we have lots of connections with them. So. In many ways, I think we all know that Bristol has a very strong identity as a green and tolerant city. We do celebrate alternative ways of living, and sort of building this resilient city has got a fertile culture which to do it. But in many ways, resilience as a concept isn't part of the zeitgeist. It's not really what people talk about a lot. So there's not a great deal of dialogue about this. It's quite interesting that I saw a survey about Bristol's being first at lots of different things. And the first thing in the list of being first was that it is always first to riot, which I thought was quite interesting. We do have this tendency to, if we're not really happy about it, we'll get out there and tell people. So we do have an alternative culture here, which is very strong and actually shapes our thinking. I particularly like the picture on the left. You may not be able to see very clearly, but it says there on Gloucester Road there that the streets have got to eat. And this is a really important message for resilience. Right. Right, the Bristol Green Capital Partnership, BGCP as we tend to call it, is instigated by Bristol City Council way back in 2007. So it's been going for a long time now. And it was to create this platform of organisations to deliver Bristol as a green city. And it has a long-term perspective. It's not about 2015. It's about 2020, 2050. Right? It's now got over 800 organisations who've pledged membership to it. It's a very loose membership concept. But now we are well over 800 in the city, which is quite a remarkable number. And earlier this year, an actual community interest company was formed to take it to the next stage. It's in a transition. I was actually in a board meeting this morning where we are talking about the next phase of development, and in particular how we build on the legacy of European Green Capital 2015. Towards the beginning of last year, we've formed within the partnership lots of action groups to look at very specific different areas of sustainability, obviously energy, food, waste, you name it, it was there. Now one of the groups that we actually formed was called the Resilience Action Group, and the idea of that was to start looking at how the city could become more resilient in the future. And now another development that came along at the same time as we were forming this Resilience Action Group was that Bristol has been chosen to be one of the Rockefellers 100 Resilient City Network. Has anybody, have you heard about that yet? Right, okay. So what will we get out of that? Obviously the chance to tell the world about what we're doing here, but directly we'll get a strategic resilience officer who's now in place. Her name's Sarah Toy, and she started work about 8 weeks or so ago. And her job is to develop a resilience plan for the city and obviously to implement it and build the resilience up. So there is that resilience plan that's going to go ahead. We have an access to a wide platform of services that Rockefeller are providing on a global scale to actually work with resilience. And of course, there's that connection to 100 other cities. At the moment, only 66 have been announced, 67. There's another tranche yet to come. In the UK, there's Glasgow and London are also in this network. And in Europe, I think we've got Rome and quite a few other cities around. But, at the end of the day, it's going to be really useful network of cities all working to the same concept of how to become more resilient. So the Resilience Action Group, therefore, underneath the Bristol Green Capital Partnership banner, but also with a strong connection into the 100 Resilient Cities as well. This is how we hope to work. Now, obviously within that, we'll be looking at issues around emergency planning and preparation. We have links with the local resilience forum, the blue light services, people who actually deal with the problems of resilience when they hit you in the face, with the shocks the system might encounter. We're also trying to raise awareness by putting a spotlight on where resilience is being, can actually be seen happening in the city, where we are resilient, who's doing it. And arts projects, we've got a lovely one going around the city starting in June, a geodesic dome, which people will enter and they'll be able to talk about what they think a resilient city might mean. So we're going to capture that. We're also very keen, well, Rockefeller are very keen as well, on measuring what we mean by resilience. How can we develop indicators for this? And we're doing a kind of a parallel study of our own to critique that. Looking at migration issues in there as well. One of the projects we just started with brings together the Environment Agency, the Council, the Strategic Resilience Officer, the Go Green project, part of European Green Capital, the Local Resilience Forum and ourselves to develop the idea of business resilience circles, getting businesses together, either geographically or through interest, to work on the mutual ability to look after each other when we have resilience issues come up. Lots of other initiatives, and we're working towards organising a community resilience conference in October this year. Now, the sustainability issues, we have touched on this a little bit earlier, but I hope everybody knows this diagram. If you don't, look at it, because it's a really important one. That sort of area there is the safe operating space for the planet. If we stay within that, then we should be okay. 9 planetary boundaries. And as you can see, we've pretty well bust out of 3 of them. A couple more we're pretty much on the edge. Unfortunately, 2 of them we don't even know where we are, which is really worrying about chemical pollution, atmospheric aerosol loading. These are really, really worrying factors that this planet is being used way beyond its capacity. And the point is the global picture, but that global picture is going to come and hit us here in this city, and we need to be prepared for it. We're more working a little bit of theory here, if you don't mind, a little bit. Sort of, I love to pick up words and see how, a thesaurus is a great research tool, I find. You can actually get lovely ideas out of just seeing what words connect to other words. So we have resilience and anti-fragile, and I think if you know Taleb's work, that's a really important aspect for what we're trying to deal with here. Anti-fragility, actually wanting things to go wrong, seeking errors in order to find out and learn. So those are words there, and contradistinction is fragility, is the kind of opposite of resilience, the anti-resilience thing. So really worth working with these words to find out what it is we're trying to deal with. When we look at the theory around resilience, there are different ways of looking at it, and this one we call type 4 resilience, which is transformative. And the really important thing here is that we see what you might call the panarchic loops of actually going through cycles of growth, conservation, retraction, and reconfiguration. That happens a great deal in natural systems. Natural ecologies have these sort of fairly steady loops of doing this. But the transformative one says actually there's a kind of a shift. That the difference is that in that reconfiguration stage, innovations introduced, which change the whole nature of the system. And it's that, I think, is key to what we're dealing with here. That looking at the future of a city like Bristol, we need innovations to be introduced which change the nature of the system. Because what we actually have at the moment, if you look at it, it's got path-dependent trajectories on many things: energy, resources, employment, transport, food, water, information, population, infrastructure. The thing that makes the city is hugely path-dependent. They are super tankers that you can't shift easily. They're going to happen. There are some major threats looming around climate change. I know that Phil mentioned the radio this morning. I think he was talking about James Lovelock, actually saying climate change is going to happen and don't bother about renewable energy, just adapt to it. So that's his message. But climate change is threatening geopolitics, food security, all kinds of things that are going to be stresses that can turn into shocks that are going to hit the city. But we do have these major opportunities: the new technologies, the materials, new fashions, new processes. We've got many strengths and weaknesses. Universities and fossil-dependent industry. Think about that connection. So, redistributed manufacturing, I feel, could change the nature of the system in this transformative resilience loop. But the question is, will it all be an improvement at all scales? These are some real critical questions to start delving into. Will we become more resilient than before? Or actually, will some of this actually make us less resilient? It's very easy to drop into this mode of thinking, here's a wonderful new technology that's going to come along and solve problems. They may create as many as it solves. Who will win and who will lose? Almost inevitably, when there are big shifts like this, there are losers as well as winners. Who are they? Who's going to get marginalized in all this? Are we going to deal with what's going to happen through directed research like this? Or are we going to go through what's called stochastic tinkering? In other words, having a go at it. In the software world, we would call this agile. Get on there, make something happen, see how it works, move on, learn from it. So two different approaches, and I'm not saying either is better than the other, but they are both different ways of doing it. A little bit about what we do in the Institute. We are an independent research organisation, and being called after Schumacher, small is beautiful is to us a good route to start thinking about how we should build our societies. There's a lot of commonality of thinking around redistributed manufacturing and smallness, small scale. But we do a lot of work on horizon scanning, trying to find out what's going on in the world through a project called Prepare for Change. We scan the horizon and we ponder. We think about it. We try to build system diagrams that sort of connect it all together to see what the causality is. We do that through workshops. We've done 15 workshops recently on a whole range of different topics: food systems, climate change, technologies, whatever. And we've done some conferences, larger conferences now, and I want to plug the next one, Future Fortunes, on May the 6th, which will be in this room here. So if you're interested in thinking about the future fortunes of Bristol and the surrounding area, this is what we're going to look at next. That's me. So any questions about what we're doing within that, I've been very happy to take them.
Okay.